Every story's main character will typically have a unique quality, right? Something to separate them from the crowd, something that sort of gives them the right to be the main character. Is that the right word? Mori in God of High School is the god in God of High School. Izuku Midoriya doesn't have a quirk and everybody else has one. Eren Yeager is a Titan-shifting human. Spoilers. In Tower of God, Bomb is an irregular. He's even more special than that, but at the core, right, the very first thing, or one of the first things we learn about Bomb that sets him apart is that he is an irregular. But the concept of irregular, even within the Tower of God universe, is not really well understood, and the definition is pretty loose, and it leads to, in my opinion, some problems. Now, I want to be clear, I don't mean SIU problems. I don't mean like, oh, SIU made a mistake. I just think that with the way we understand what an irregular is, there are a couple things that don't add up. There are some things in this story that don't make sense. So let's break it down. First, we have to understand exactly what makes an irregular. This is very important to understanding what these problems are and what these issues could be. So an irregular is somebody who was not chosen by the tower. I don't know if it's because of a mistranslation or because of a misunderstanding based on context clues or whatever, but I feel like I've heard some people say the opposite, that irregulars are blessed by the tower, they're chosen by the tower. And while it's true that they're in a way blessed by the tower, I'm not sure if it's like, oh, it's a hidden achievement, you got in. There are benefits to being an irregular, but the bottom line is, you were not chosen. And in fact, they're sometimes called like the unchosen irregulars. Members of the tower or inhabitants of the tower who have not been chosen, essentially breaking the rules of the tower by even existing within it, which adds a whole nother layer to what the tower could be. I would love to dive into the actual structure of the tower more in another video, but one way or another, they weren't chosen. Regulars are people who were chosen, and because of that, they do receive special benefits, such as having a natural affinity for Shinsu usually. They usually are accompanied by a great change or a great shifting of tides within the tower. We hear Hansung talk about that in season 1 quite a bit. There's this sort of acknowledgement that irregulars cause problems, which is why when Yuri shows up at the very beginning of the story, she's like, ooh, okay, this is kind of bad. And typically people will then like target the irregular because irregulars are so rare. We've only had a select few before Bomb enters, and so the arrival of a new one, it's not very good. One thing I do want to mention is that being an irregular does not mean you are not a regular. You are still a regular, just like Yurik is still a ranker. It's not as though Yurik breaks the boundaries of even that, right? Like, there are still laws in the tower that irregulars follow to an extent, but certain things like spells, for example, they don't necessarily affect irregulars in the same way. Another unique benefit of irregulars is they can use Shinwan Ryu. The god of guardians taught the 10 family heads, probably 12 now that we understand plus Jihad, taught them Shinwan Ryu, or Shinsu Black Hole Sphere as it's currently translated. This is a unique brand of Shinsu that can only be used by irregulars. It's so interesting, right? These are people who not only are not chosen by Hedon, right? There's this sort of understanding, okay, they're not chosen by Hedon, but not only that, they come from outside the tower. Like, that's already huge. So if you're from outside the tower, you automatically were not chosen, therefore you're an irregular. It's interesting, right? It's almost like there's two qualifications that go hand in hand. Not only were you not chosen, you also come from the outside. And we know that Yurik wants to go to the outside, he feels like it's better out there, but one way or another, irregulars typically are not welcome within the tower. We know Pentaminum obviously like slaughtered a bunch of people in Jihad's castle when he arrived, and then Enryu caused havoc when he killed the administrator on the 43rd floor. Yurik started Walhike Song, you know, like all these people have caused problems. So now Bomb is entering, and Bomb has these unique skills that even other irregulars don't possess, and it's easy to understand why there's an entire war being fought because of Bomb. So okay, I feel like the definition's pretty clear now. It's not somebody who was chosen, it's somebody who was not chosen, but they do receive a lot of special benefits because of it, even though they're also kind of targeted for it. So what are the problems? Well, first of all, there are characters in this story, specifically one of them, and I'm sure you saw part of this coming, who uses Shinwan Ryu, therefore would almost prove they're an irregular, but they shouldn't be, and that's Ghost. Ghost is an affiliate of Hedon, which automatically makes this more interesting because Hedon chooses regulars, right? Hedon is somebody who is responsible for choosing regulars who become rankers, but Ghost is somebody who is affiliated with Hedon, chosen by Hedon to protect Rachel, and yet he can use Shinwan Ryu. This is not explained at all. There are theories about why, which is a whole nother topic I'm not going to get into. Click the card if you want to hear more. But Either way, Ghost already proves that this term irregular could be broader than we think. But it goes even deeper, because Enryu and Pentaminum and Yurik were not the only irregulars before Bomb. We also had the 10 family heads, 12 family heads really, plus Jihad, being Jihad, Arlen V, etc. Kun Edwan, Hon. These are also irregulars who could use Shinwan Ryu. That's not a problem. But here's the biggest issue I have. We know for a fact there had to have been more than just the 13, because SIU has talked about some of the other traveling companions of these 13. We know Quadrado climbed with them, the original owner of Kranos that Yuri now has, and he recorded their history and their story along the weapon. We know that the Ancients, or the descendants of the Ancients, travel with them too before they were wiped out and cursed, potentially. But the biggest ones are, first of all, Luzlek, the leader of Fug. He has the family name, the same family name as Arlen Grace. This is already weird because Viol is named Juviol Grace, right? Does he get one from his dad, one from his mom, Ju from his dad, and Grace from his mom? That already complicates things. But the fact that he has that family name could insinuate he's related to Arlen. I feel like it's too much of a coincidence, right? The leader of Fug taking in Bomb and naming him Viol Grace, right? That's already weird, especially since his mom's name is Arlen Grace. That's already weird, but you could argue, as many have, and it's very valid, that Luzlek was adopted into the family. Perhaps he was already a resident of the tower, not from the outside, and he took on the family name, perhaps even out of respect or honor after V and Arlen quote-unquote died, right? That's fine. There's still somebody who kind of throws this concept of irregulars into a bit of a jamble for me. Is that a word, jamble? Look it up, Joe. And that character is Jan Elarde. Not Jan Hana, the leader of the family, but Jan Elarde. Jan Elarde is a relative of Jan Hana who is responsible for the birth of the Jan family's children, or at least the first generation of Jan family kids. Now, you could make the exact same argument. Well, maybe they weren't really related and it's somebody who was adopted into the Jan family. No, that's impossible, because Jan Elarde is the one who passes on the flame of the Jan family. Right, somehow, I don't know if Hana or whatever, but the Jan flame is passed on through Elarde because she's essentially the mother of the family, even though Hana's the leader of the family. So they have to be related. We know that Hana is from the outside, so how could Hana be from the outside but Elarde's from the inside? Automatically, Elarde's an irregular. Either Elarde's an irregular or the definition falls flat and there is a problem. It has to be one of the two. Or you could argue that just our understanding of who is an irregular, the list of irregulars isn't complete. We have to add on Elarde to there. But even within the story, nobody addresses Elarde as an irregular. God of Guardians wasn't oh, and I also trained Jan Elarde. Nobody mentions that. So it's just automatically strange to me. How do we not know that others also entered? It was the 13 plus Elarde, so it was the 14? It's just so odd to me. Unless there's something about Elarde we don't understand, maybe Elarde is some kind of clone of Hana that was created within the tower, that would be really cool and would actually kind of explain a couple things. But one way or another, the lore, unless the lore is wrong, or unless the definition is wrong, or something's up. That's my point, something's up. There's also something else that has been bothering me about this concept of irregulars, right? And that's Rachel. Now, here's the thing. Rachel didn't really enter the tower. There's some theories, there's controversy and conversation about really what happened when Bomb and Rachel entered, but my understanding is that Bomb opened the door and Rachel fell through. She was underneath him, she went through first, and then the door was oh, wait a minute, I forgot about you, and then snagged Bomb. So because of that, Rachel doesn't have the same benefits as Bomb and Yurik and Pentaminum. She doesn't have this crazy Shinsu growth or Shinsu potential. She doesn't have crazy strength or anything. Now, granted, Bomb didn't have that at the beginning either, but still, it's pretty clear that even as an irregular, Rachel sucks. But then it's okay, did all 14 of the original warriors each individually enter, or did they all enter? Because otherwise, is Jan Elarde a Rachel type of irregular who entered without specifically having opened the door? Right? It's weird. It's they all entered at the same time. We know that. But then, okay, why aren't some of them like Rachel, who don't have the same benefits because of it? Or does Rachel just suck and that's the bottom line and she's just unique in that way? I don't know. It's also like, maybe people on the outside in general are just really strong and have this potential. It's not even like entering the tower on your own grants you this benefit. It's like, no, you're from the outside, so therefore you're naturally better than the others. Which, I'm just realizing this, could imply that Rachel was originally from the inside. Oh my god, that makes so much sense. If Rachel was from the inside, it makes sense why she doesn't have the same benefits as the other irregulars. Because she's from the inside, was brought outside by Arlen along with the dead body of Bomb, and then was tasked with taking care of Bomb and then re-entered. The only issue with that is that Rachel talks about stories of the tower as if she didn't exist there. So maybe she was also a kid and doesn't remember, but that could actually explain a lot. That's interesting. These are the questions I have when talking about what makes an irregular and what are the rules and restrictions around it, or lack of rules and restrictions. Another thing is that the tests within the tower originally were set up for irregulars only, or at least that's kind of how they are now. So how it worked was when Jihad and the original warriors entered, they directly took tests from the administrators. There wasn't obviously a system in place established by someone like Jihad. It was just, no, on each floor, the administrator had a test for you. And these were very difficult tests, unlike the ones now. The ones now are much easier and much smoother, I guess you could say, much less dangerous perhaps, or less complicated, not sure. That's why in the second floor, Bomb is like, hey, I'll choose to take the administrator's test, not your test, Han Sung-yu. But then Han Sung said, you have to be an irregular. Bomb reveals he's an irregular. Han Sung's plan works. But that kind of insinuates that those tests are only for irregulars. So the administrators set up the inner tower as a sort of trial ground only for people from the outside? Makes sense, right? Like other people who already were inhabitants like Quadrado or Malik or Luzluk perhaps, they didn't take these tests before the warriors entered. Right, as far as we know. I think these tests were only designed for irregulars. Otherwise, after Jihad establishes his own reign and his own sort of tests and such, why then do you have to be an irregular to take the administrator's test? Are you following? Does that make sense? It's just weird. Something doesn't make sense here. I don't know if it'll ever be explained, but I would love to know what you think about this. I've already shared my thoughts, so please comment below. I would love to know what you think about this. Like this video if you want to see more like this, because I'm feeling inspired as of late to make more content, so please show your support. I'll see you Sunday for the Tower of God live reaction, and until then, have a wonderful week. Ta-ta!